As American citizens, demanding truth from our government is the very foundation of our freedom. Senator Booker challenged Secretary Rubio directly regarding documented $50 billion revenue flows to Iran. Watch what unfolded in the hearing room.
Estimates have been between $10 and $50 billion they got from that relaxing of sanctions. How much money might we see in a deal in our relaxings of sanctions in order to get rid of the highly enriched uranium and stop their enrichment?
Well, let me just tell you on that portion. The sanctions that were released on Iran were boats on the water.
We are the strongest nation on the planet Earth, and we're in a stalemate with Iran. And now we're begging to get back into a deal that you all trashed in the first place.
There's no one begging. I don't
Clearly,
know.
this is
Senator
a
Senator Booker, your time's up.
But
Senator Rubio, since he's
I do
gone
want to
over,
address
you
some
can
of these points
respond.
because they go to the heart of the matter. No one's begging for anything here. The Iranians might be begging because their economy's losing hundreds of millions of dollars a day. That they are losing. Understand, Iran had street protests going on before all of this started. All of those factors, economic factors in Iran, are far worse today than they were 6 months ago when those protests were happening. They have hyperinflation, their currency's completely devalued.
The rest of this exchange reveals critical details every voter should evaluate. Watch the full proceeding now.
Mr. Secretary, you and I talked a lot about Africa, and I raised concerns about a lot of the cuts. We're seeing globally an increase in tuberculosis, an increase in malaria cases. We see a continued ongoing on the continent HIV crisis. And the United States has pulled back from a lot of its investments in those areas. Now with the crisis with Ebola, we see that the challenges that have been brought about as a result of our surveillance, early detection, and the like. So I'm just very concerned about what the administration's strategy is, because we're clearly seeing here that what goes on the continent of Africa directly affects our public health as well.
Well, first of all, I don't agree with that assessment. I mean, first of all, it's not about cutting back. The response here is not just how much money you spend, it's what results you're going to get. Now, let's talk about Ebola for a second. Ebola, the outbreak in Ebola was in a war-torn, isolated rural area in the DRC. That's where that began. Since that time, our response has been very quick, very rapid.
Well, so you're saying you did not cut early detection periods. I'm not talking
I'm saying that whatever you're pointing to as a cut is not the reason why there was an Ebola outbreak.
I'm not connecting the two. I'm simply saying.
Well, you are connecting them. You said that our cuts...
Senator Rubio, I'm not trying to get in an argument with you. I would really like to actually have my questions answered. So very quickly, we cut early detection when it comes to infectious diseases on the continent. Factually, this is not an opinion. We made those cuts. We cut early warning systems on the continent.
It had nothing to do with the Ebola outbreak.
So I don't need to tell you, Secretary Rubio, that we're living in a place where an infectious disease crisis anywhere is a threat to public health everywhere. The United States has made major reductions in these areas that have put us more at risk. If you're talking about this clearly Ebola crisis, there's other things and other cuts we've made, and you see it factually. Even our own State Department personnel that I've talked to are saying we're less prepared for a global outbreak than we were before. And my worry is, specifically in a budget hearing, is this budget makes even deeper cuts into the kind of things that could prevent the next outbreak, or, as we've seen unfortunately with COVID, have us more prepared.
Yeah, I don't agree with that assessment. I don't know who told you that at the State Department.
Pay close attention to what just happened here. Senator Booker pointed to official budget cuts, while Secretary Rubio disputed the assessment rather than the facts themselves. Ask yourself, is a policy disagreement the same as disproving the underlying record? Watch closely as Booker now shifts the hearing directly to Iran and the Strait of Hormuz.
So let's move on. My time is limited.
I know, that's an important question. I don't want to eat up your time, but I need to answer that because I just don't agree with that.
Mr. Secretary, you can't even agree on the facts.
Because that's not accurate. I mean, again, you look at what we've entered into with these
It's not accurate that we cut early detection.
Because those have all been repurposed in different arrangements that we now have with these countries. As an example,
I would like, for the record, because we're not going to cover it in my short time, if you're telling me we are as prepared or more prepared before the Trump administration came in, I'd like to see the facts.
I think when these reforms are finalized, which we're on the verge of doing, we're actually going to be better prepared. We are responding today faster, not just to humanitarian crisis, but to outbreaks than we were before. We are responding in some cases within 72 hours, are able to move funds to task, which you weren't able to do in the old system. And we're also building the capacity of these nation states through these compacts.
May I please reclaim my time to shift gears? The Strait of Hormuz, I was listening to the conversations you had with some of my colleagues. We've now seen the Strait close for months, and you explained that we're going to see an opening of the Strait and ultimately the exchange we will get for that is after that fact we will release certain sanctions. Is that correct?
No, that's not what I said. What I said was that if they open the straits, we will lift our blockade. The straits and the blockade are what are interrelated.
And so for the nuclear program, in exchange for getting rid of the fissile material out of country, I imagine, is what the highly enriched uranium, we would release sanctions. Is that correct?
Well, it's not just that. It's also their enrichment activity. They would have to, they would have to make very severe and significant concessions on what they intend to enrich in the future.
And already with the March relaxing of sanctions, allowing Iranians to sell oil to the Chinese, estimates have been between $10 and $50 billion they got from that relaxing of sanctions. How much money might we see in a deal in our relaxings of sanctions in order to get rid of the highly enriched uranium and stop their enrichment?
Well, let me just tell you on that portion. The sanctions that were released on Iran were boats on the water. And so that oil was already out in the marketplace. It was sold at market rates, but the sanctions covered, and to the extent we've been able to enforce them, we have the revenues of those sales. So yeah, the Iranian oil was unsanctioned so that it could be sold, but the revenue would have to flow back to blocked accounts, which our sanctions were able to go after. We've also seized, I believe, 6 vessels in the Indo-Pacific that involved Iranian sanctioned oil on top of it. So that wasn't necessarily a trade. They didn't get $50 billion directly as a result of. They might have gotten some of it. They certainly didn't get the majority of it. They are now losing hundreds of millions of dollars a day in revenue because of the blockade. And the blockade exists because of what they're doing in the straits.
Right.
Look closely at Rubio's boats on the water defense. He explained that mid-voyage oil sales were routed to blocked accounts to avoid diplomatic chaos with Chinese buyers. But here is what remained unsaid. Routing money to blocked accounts still sent a clear signal that American sanctions have exceptions. The oil moved, and adversaries took note. Ask yourself, if you were running foreign finances, would blocked accounts concern you more than a clear sanctions exception would encourage you? Watch carefully as Booker forces Rubio to address this exact flaw.
Right. And I guess the conclusion I have, and my time's expired, is that the Strait of Hormuz was open before this unjustified war. We're now scrambling to try to find a way to get it back opened again. Not only is it causing economic havoc to our country and to residents all around this nation, families trying to make ends meet, but you see on top of that, the Iranians finding ways to leverage that as we allowed them to do with the Chinese for tens of billions of dollars. And so my point is, before we even get to a nuclear negotiation, this regime is getting money to rebuild, purchase more drones, cause more havoc. And this is before we're even trying to get back to a point.
But I apologize. I don't understand how they're getting this. What revenue are you referring to?
Well, there's 2 sources of revenue we're seeing. One is the revenue from the Chinese. That's factually documented. And number 2, the revenue that you're proposing that they should receive by releasing all of their highly enriched uranium, as well as in making a commitment about their enrichment capacities.
Yeah.
Hold on. And that was the exact deal that you guys vilified, that the president and you vilified President Obama from having.
Yeah. Now,
So
I
here
don't
we
think
have
those are
a
not the
worse situation where
Those are not the same
our
deals.
adversary and our enemy, who's causing havoc in the region, who is funding proxies and terrorists, has discovered, thanks to you all, the power of shutting down the Strait of Hormuz.
No, they didn't discover. They knew that a long time ago, and they've done it before.
Clearly, we all knew that a long time ago. That's why this
And they intended to do this at
ill-conceived
some point
war
in the
should have
future
never
as well.
happened.
Yeah, but
you have made our adversary in a stronger negotiating position. We are the strongest nation on the planet Earth, and we're in a stalemate with Iran. And now we're begging to get back into a deal that you all
We're not
trashed
begging.
in the first place.
There's no one begging. I don't
Clearly,
know.
this is a
Senator
shame.
Booker.
Booker's claim that America is begging for a deal forced an immediate reaction from Rubio. Booker's core point wasn't just a talking point, it was about practical reality. Negotiating with the Strait of Hormuz closed and fuel prices elevated creates a drastically different dynamic than before the conflict began. Even as Rubio insisted Iran is crumbling, the economic strain at home remains a pressing reality. Consider this. Can a nation be winning militarily while its citizens absorb the economic fallout at the pump? Watch how Rubio responds as Chairman Risch gives him the floor.
This is a
Senator
shame.
Booker, your time's up.
But can
Senator
I just-
Rubio, since he's
I do
gone
want to
over,
address
you
some
can
of these points
respond.
because they go to the heart of the matter. No one's begging for anything here. The Iranians might be begging because their economy's losing hundreds of millions of dollars a day. That they are losing. Understand, Iran had street protests going on before all of this started. All of those factors, economic factors in Iran, are far worse today than they were 6 months ago when those protests were happening. They have hyperinflation. Their currency's completely devalued. They're struggling to make payroll for their government workers. Iran is in a very serious situation. And if it was up to the political class there, and I understand everybody there is sort of radical in some way, but if it was up to the people that actually like go to elections and wear the suits and you see on TV, they'd probably make a deal tomorrow. It's the issue they're facing is that the supreme leader and the IRGC Corps are a little bit more immune from those pressures until they can be convinced otherwise. And I think that's the direction that they're moving in, because the reality that I don't know where you're getting this perception that Iran is stronger. Iran has no navy left. They've lost a substantial percentage of their defense industrial base. That Iran has lost a substantial percentage of their missile launchers, and their economy is far worse today, and I mean far worse today, than it was 6 to 9 months ago. And they are looking at hundreds of billions of dollars of reconstruction costs just to get to where they were 6 months
Mr. Rubio, you keep telling us how we're winning this war. The president keeps saying,
well, the war's over
completely
now.
annihilated. The war is not over. And yet the American people see how we're losing at the pump and with their costs, and yet this thing still hasn't been resolved. Every day he tweets out, oh, we've obliterated them, we've annihilated them, they're going to surrender. But yet we still find ourselves spending billions of dollars a week
Senator
on a
Booker,
war abroad.
you've gone way over. And
It would be nice if we had hearings.
3 times Senator Booker pressed for a straight answer on real costs, and 3 times Secretary Rubio shifted the focus to military victories. The record in that room is clear as day. Winning an argument on paper is not the same thing as solving a crisis at the pump. Instead of addressing the daily financial pressure on American families, Rubio pointed to long-term foreign targets. That isn't confusion. That is a deliberate choice on the official record. He made the case that Iran is effectively defeated on every measurable dimension. No navy, gutted missile infrastructure, hyperinflation, a government that cannot make payroll, a political class that, in his words, would cut a deal tomorrow if the Supreme Leader and the IRGC allowed it. From a military and economic standpoint, his description may be largely accurate. Iran has sustained heavy economic and military losses. That is not the argument. The real issue is the economic price paid for that strategy. Rubio's portrait of a crumbling Iran sits directly alongside a reality he did not address in his response. The Strait of Hormuz remains closed. Fuel prices are elevated. Consumer goods cost more. The United States is still spending billions of dollars per week to sustain military operations in the region. Those facts did not appear anywhere in Rubio's rebuttal, and that silence is the most important thing that happened in the final minutes of this exchange. There is a term for what Rubio was describing, though he did not use it. Analysts call it a military victory without political resolution. You can degrade an adversary's military capacity so thoroughly that they cannot fight effectively, and still find yourself unable to convert that military reality into a political outcome, because the people making the decisions on their side are insulated from the pain their population is feeling. Rubio himself acknowledged this explicitly. The Supreme Leader and the IRGC are a little bit more immune from those pressures. That is not a minor caveat. That is the entire problem stated in plain language. What Booker was pointing at, even if the end of his time prevented him from completing the argument, is a scenario every serious foreign policy analyst has warned about: a protracted conflict where one side wins militarily and both sides lose economically, while the political deadlock that caused the war in the first place remains completely intact. The everyday citizens paying the price on both sides have no say in when it ends. The billions spent per week that Booker cited are real. Congress's own budget office has documented the cost of sustained naval and air operations in the Persian Gulf region. The closure of the Strait of Hormuz affects roughly 20% of global oil trade. Every week it remains closed. The pressure on household budgets across America compounds. That isn't a political argument. It is a straightforward financial reality. Now, here is the question that nobody in that hearing room asked out loud, but that deserves a direct answer. If Iran is as broken as Rubio described, Why has the strait not reopened? The IRGC controls the strait through land-based missile systems and small boat capabilities that a destroyed Navy does not eliminate. Targeting naval assets and missile launchers does not automatically remove the ability to threaten commercial shipping in a narrow waterway. The military campaign and the economic standoff operate on different tracks, and Rubio's account of Iranian military losses did not address the second track at all. Booker's final line before the chairman cut him off wasn't just a political statement. It would be nice if we had hearings where people had to be held accountable. That sentence carries a specific weight when you consider what a Senate Foreign Relations Committee hearing actually is. It is one of the very few forums where a cabinet secretary sits before elected representatives and answers questions under the pressure of a public record. The chairman controls the clock. The secretary controls the level of specificity in every answer. And the senator asking the questions has a time limit measured in minutes. Accountability in that structure is genuinely difficult to produce, and Booker knew it. What this entire exchange revealed, from the Africa surveillance cuts at the start to the Iran nuclear negotiation at the end, is a consistent pattern. When specific facts were raised, the response was not to dispute the facts, but to dispute their meaning. Cuts happened, but they did not cause the outbreak. Oil revenue flowed, but not all of it reached Iran. The strait is closed, but Iran is losing. Each of those responses may contain partial truths. What they collectively avoid is the most important question of all. At what point must official statistics align with the real costs ordinary families face every single day? When a Senate session highlights two completely different views on gas prices and foreign strategy, the real decision rests with you. Did Senator Booker pinpoint a genuine flaw in how these oil deals were managed, or did Secretary Rubio lay out a necessary defense of national policy? Tell us where you stand in the comments. For clear, balanced coverage that respects your intelligence, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to the Politics Report. You can also back our independent work by becoming a channel member. To watch our breakdown of another critical congressional hearing, tap the video on your screen right now. Thank you for watching.